But the truth is that Mr. Trump, despite counsel by all kinds of people that he should not go on this path because it will start unraveling the US, which is a country of immigrants, he's gone ahead and do it. And this will have a disastrous implications not only for his country, but for the rest of the world, because there are so many countries, gullible, you can say at the most, which who all look up to the US, and they might copy the United States of America when it comes to targeting immigrants and also people from minority community. So there is a very dark times ahead for all of us. Indians, for that matter, or people from Guatemala or from Mexico, all come under the arc of suspicion, and they will be questioned. I mean, how else would you think the authorities will find out? They will ask anybody, put the fear of God in them, and tell them, look here, if you don't, then you are going to the camps. I don't think anybody who's there in the US would try to even step out of the confines of their home without the papers, because you don't know, you may go to the mall or a store, to the market to pick up some groceries, and you may be hauled up by the police and they'll take you away without informing your family. So there is a great amount of fear or separation. I don't think that India is in a position to persuade the US to behave in a different manner. We don't have the clout, we don't have the numbers. We are a country barely $3 trillion or $3.5 trillion. And the US is talking to China. China is about $18.5 trillion, and they are basically engaged with each other to find out how best they can deal with do business. The Indian government should talk to the Americans and say that you have to be softer and more sympathetic. You cannot really go back, change your rules in a manner which leaves the entire so-called people who have been living in the US for the last 20-30 years to be rendered absolutely useless, or be rendered illegal immigrants who don't get citizenship in your country when there was a provision for giving them.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. Donald Trump has begun his crackdown as far as the illegal migrants in America are concerned. And there are reports that some 18,000 undocumented Indians will be deported back to India. S. Jaishankar has met his counterpart, Mr. Rubio, and he has discussed this issue. But how serious is this crisis? And also, along with the undocumented Indians, the undocumented migrants in America, is the birthright issue. And there are reports coming in that this birthright issue is going to be challenged in the court of law. There are many petitions which have already been filed. But how is this crisis going to evolve? Will it evolve as a big humanitarian crisis? What will be its impact on India? We'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me now is international affairs expert and veteran journalist Sanjay Kapoor, who's been covering external affairs for a very, very long while. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining on HW News. And my first question to you is that Mr. S. Jaishankar has met his counterpart just late last evening. And how serious is this issue of undocumented Indians? And now the figure stands at 18,000. So is the figure beyond that? Because I was talking unofficially to a few diplomats who said that this number is as large as 700,000.
I think it's a very big issue which cannot be dismissed in any manner. And I think that is why, you find that it is occupying everybody's mind, because in a certain way, it is a collapse of dream for many middle-class families who aspire to send their son and daughters to the US for higher studies and eventually settle down. Even now, if you call up any of your relatives and find out where their kids are, so they would be, if they are in India, they'll be in Bangalore, and otherwise they would be in the US. And there's great amount of pride in the movement of people from one place to another. So all that will go away, primarily because people who are holders of H-1B visa, they will find that their children won't get something that came naturally, the citizenship, because the fact that they were born in this country of USA, they were thought that they could get it as birthright, but that's not really happening. So, although, as you rightly pointed out, the matter is being challenged, I'm told 22 states attorney generals have come together and they have filed a case in the Supreme Court. The matter will
Yes.
be taken up immediately. This is how the New York Times has reported. And there's going to be a long legal fight. But the truth is that Mr. Trump, despite counsel by all kinds of people that he should not go on this path because it will start unraveling the US, which is a country of immigrants, he's gone ahead and do it. And this will have a disastrous implications not only for his country but for the rest of the world, because there are so many countries, gullible you can say at the most, which who all look up to the US, and they might copy the United States of America when it comes to targeting immigrants and also people from minority community. So there is a very dark times ahead for all of us.
But Sanjay, what I'm wanting to understand from you is that since this number is much more than 18,000 as is officially reported, how is it really going to impact India? Because and how well prepared is going to be the Indian government? All these people who will be deported back, obviously they will have to look for ways and means to employ themselves, to settle themselves back. How difficult will that crisis be for Modi to handle it?
It's a country of ours is always mired in some crisis or the other. If you look at it, without the 18,000 people coming back to India, which is likely to happen in the coming days, you have a large unemployment, a kind of unemployment which India has not experienced in long years. You also have the issue of grinding poverty. In fact, 800 million people are being fed by the government, which is like crazy. I mean, you don't have 800 million in any country who are at the mercy of the government. So it is only a collapse of an opportunity for people who thought that they didn't have anything going for them, and so they could go to the US. And when 18,000 people come, they would be at the mercy of their own skill set or their own families, whom they must be in touch with them. But I don't think the government is really going to provide anything. I remember long years ago, there was a crisis which came unfolded in the Gulf also, where they were sending back Indians, and the burden was on Kerala government, and they had planned what to do, how to adjust the Indians because they were all very highly skilled and they could be employed there. But in the case of these undocumented people who have no documents, they must have just gone in the last few years. It's not they must have acquired a great amount of skills, and they will be coming back, and probably what stays at them is the same life that they left behind. Nothing more, nothing less.
Right, but how is the scene going to look like? Is it going to be very chaotic? We remember what happened during the CA and NRC protests in India, and the documents were being asked by the Modi government. Are we going to see a replay of like what we saw in India? Is Trump really going to operate in that manner?
I think so, because what is going to happen in the coming days? In fact, yesterday alone, the media was writing that what we will see is that uh, many cops and you have the agents of the state going around the streets of the US, and especially in the states they're in power, the Republicans are in power, and checking out for people with of color, especially because they are the ones who can be identified as coming from countries where the citizenship may be required. Indians, for that matter, or people from Guatemala or from Mexico, all come under the arc of suspicion, and they will be questioned. I mean, how else would you think the authorities will find out? They will ask anybody, put the fear of God in them, and tell them, look here, if you don't, then you are going to the camps. Don't think anybody who's there in the US would try to even step out of the confines of their home without the papers, because you don't know, you may go to the mall or a store to the market uh, for some to pick up some groceries, and you may be hauled up by the police and they'll take you away without informing your family. So there is a great amount of fear or separation, because in the last term of the president in 2016 to 2020, he had launched a similar policies against the immigrants. He's obsessed about stopping people from Mexico. He doesn't like them, and they that had resulted in the separation of the family in a manner that was unthinkable. The children were separated from their parents, and I'm sure this time it'll be worse because he's making so much song and dance about it. I mean, there is a appreciation which comes from the right wing crowd that what is wrong with handling illegals, but you must remember the speech by the priest spoke truth to power when she said and got up and said, be kind to the people who come from different distant lands, who are belong to the LGBTQ community, who are because when we came, we were outsiders, we were not the people who belong to this place. So there is a certain voice of wisdom and sanity which has been conveying to us. But the reaction of Donald Trump, the president, has been vicious. He has castigated that lady priest for saying that, or and called her as one of those who has facilitated the entry of many illegal immigrants to the U.S. So I'm sure this is going to carry on for a while. Nobody's going to back off. And as I've been saying for quite a while, you have a case of many Democrats who've been preparing for such an eventuality. They have people like Elizabeth Warren. She said in so many words, we are ready for all that shit Mr. Trump is going to throw at us. Our lawyers are ready, money, resources, everything's ready. We're going to stop them and ensure that they're not able to succeed in their enterprise.
Right, but Sanjay, the kind of pictures which we've been seeing since morning, and at the U.S. Mexican border, the steel wall which has been erected, people have tried to mount on that wall and cross over, and the asylum centers, they have been locked. What is this scenario going to result like, and what about those people who've been waiting to cross the border? What is really going to happen to them, and the country where they are in right now? What happens to that country? How is that country going to react? All of this is a great matter of concern at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a humanitarian crisis. I hope that the national emergency that Mr. Trump has declared along the border doesn't result in bloodshed because people are desperate because they are pressed from both sides. The Americans don't want them to come in, and there is no space left in their own country or even Mexico. Mexican government says that these people who are trying to cross over aren't theirs. They have come from Guatemala or some other country which has suffered political and social instability. So in these circumstances, it becomes far difficult for anybody to do anything. And we don't know the backstory. There must so much of pain and there's so much of misery that resides in the lives of people who are trying to cross over. They're willing to give up their life to cross over because we don't know. Maybe half of the families in the U.S. waiting for them to cross over, or you may have the other half here waiting to connect with their daughter or son. So there is so much of pain. There's so much of agony which is at display, and I'm not very sure how it is all going to play out because.
But you do feel that this particular issue will evolve into a big humanitarian crisis across the world.
I think it is a major issue, especially if there is fighting, if the people get killed. I think at some stage, these countries which are facing the brunt of this movement have to go to the United Nations and say that whether this kind of thing can be allowed. Because for all these years, people have been going to the US for some reason or the other.
Okay, so you are hinting at the fact, Sanjay,
they have not been a beneficiary.
No, but you are hinting at the fact that various nations might come together, will try and address this issue before United Nations. Is that what you're saying?
I think that at some stage that have to be done, or even though it has been taken up individually, like India has done. Mr. Jaishankar has spoken with Mr. Marco Rubin, who's the new Secretary of State of the Trump administration, a market, very, you can say, anti-China man. And he has been talked to by Mr. Jaishankar that he should do something about it. But at the moment, we are talking about individual states or countries trying to cut a deal or trying to make the US see reason. But this is not going to work. I think the US is pretty convinced about doing anything. They will have to be persuaded far more aggressively by the countries. Like, for instance, in a reaction to what the US is doing, the Canada government or some individuals in the Canadian government are saying that they will ensure that there's no power supply to the US. So such retaliation might start happening. So it's a world in chaos. All issues of the past have been forgotten. Poor Zelensky of Ukraine has been crying that why a deal has been struck with Russia, why he has not been taken into loop. That was all yesterday, and he has to make do with things that are going to unfold tomorrow.
What do you think is Jaisha? I mean, can India, or for that matter, any other country, can they afford to offend Trump at this point of time when he has already made up his mind? He's brought in a policy like that as far as the undocumented migrants are concerned, as far as the birthright issue is concerned. Of course, it is going to be challenged in the court. But can any country dare to oppose Trump at this point of time?
I don't know about the other countries. There could be countries which are traditionally display animosity towards the US, like Venezuela might do it, or for that matter, others like Iran might do it because they have all suffered at the hands of the US. But initially, there is a honeymoon period. I don't know how long the honeymoon was going to last. I don't think that India is in a position to persuade the US to behave in a different manner. We don't have the clout. We don't have the numbers. We are a country barely $3 trillion or $3.5 trillion. And the US is talking to China. China is about $18.5 trillion, and they are basically engaged with each other to find out how best they can deal with do business. And that is also our failing. We have economically done so badly in the last few years that we have lost the kind of leverage or influence we could have had on others. We also pursued policies which don't give us the support of the non-aligned movement or anybody for that matter. So I think there is a need for
Which are the countries which you said that India is not in a position to offend Trump in any way, but which are the countries from where you could expect some kind of a strong backlash against Donald Trump?
I don't think it has to be many other guys like the NAM movement if they get together, but it's non-existent. There is none. Actually, you look at it, Mr. Trump will do a deal with the Chinese. China is not impacted. To do a deal with maybe Russia for that matter, Russia is not greatly impacted. They're impacted more due to some other reason, but not by the crisis of immigration. Immigration is, as somebody very colorfully told me, is a crisis of the failed nations, countries that are not able to look after the poor. He was pointing out, does Thailand have a problem? Does Indonesia have a problem? Does Malaysia have a problem? No, nobody's crying so much.
You know what, you just mentioned a very significant point, and that brings me to the most important question: that can we hold Trump responsible for this? Because he's trying to correct a wrong which has been done in his own country. He's trying to say that, look, you cannot reside in America because you don't have documents. So can we hold him responsible, or it's time now that the countries realize that what are the problems within your country that so many people are migrating? If 18,000 Indians are coming back, which means the reality is that those 18,000 or even more had to travel to America for lucrative options. Why are those options not available in India? Do we come back to that basic question? And Trump has forced all the nations to think on that line.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there are millions of questions that are going to be asked. There is also a history of why people travel from one place to another. It's basically in search of greener pastures. When life is very tough for you, realize that, things are not yielding the dividends that you really look for in life. So you decide to go. You leave your home, your loved ones, your relatives, your earth, and go to a foreign land. And sometimes it is because of the policies of imperialism of big countries, or if you are suffering from colonialism, that is what happens. So there are a number of historical issues. But having said that, there is a responsibility of the nation state to ensure that the people of the country do not suffer. They don't take the donkey route. They should not be the ones who are paying some 35 to 40 lakhs to fly down to the US so that they can go to Nicaragua and Nicaragua crossover. That should not happen. I think we have a responsibility. Why did they do it? It's a suggestion that you are not caring for your people. They voted for you to power, and you allow this kind of situation to go on. Nobody talks about it, but I think there is a need for introspection. The country that allows this has to be answerable to the people of India. That look here, we are sorry.
Yeah, in fact, Sanjay, we have a very glaring data of the people who are leaving their own country and settling in other nations. And time to time, those reports have been published in the media. In a way, Trump, with his crackdown on illegal migrants in America, has this stance, and I'm talking about India only, that has it exposed Prime Minister Modi in a big way, that all the tall claims he made, they have all fallen flat. So has Trump really exposed Modi's policies today?
Inadvertently, he might have done that in a certain way. I don't think Mr. Trump has anybody in mind except his own face and his own people, the MAGA crowd, maybe. But, by being you can tough it on such issues, he has displayed that many of those people who swear by him and he thought he was his friend, they have been, in a certain way, exposed very badly. In fact, shown as very inadequate leaders, people who cannot really look after his own people. So I think there is a need that something more should have been done by them. But having said that, at the most, the Indian government should talk to the Americans and say you have to be softer and more sympathetic. You cannot really go back, change your rules in a manner which leaves the entire so-called uh, people who have been living in the in the US for the last 20, 30 years to be rendered absolutely useless, or be rendered illegal immigrants who don't get citizenship in your country when there was a provision for giving them. So I think there are many things that have to be sorted out. Surely the case is being considered constitutionally not viable when the attorney generals are going to the court, and they are hoping from the 22 states who are under Democrats, and they want an answer from the Supreme Court. I think in the coming days, the Supreme Court is going to talk about it. It'll take it up, and people who advised Mr. Trump maybe had a different view, which will be presented to the Supreme Court there. So it's an interesting legal battle is going to ensue.
Right. But how do you think will Modi and probably S. Jaishankar handle the issue of the H-1B H-1B visa issue? Because they do want that that legal channel should remain open and they should not offend Trump to a level. So how will that issue get dealt with between India and US?
For a while, the government of India has been exercising this option of sending their young men abroad. I mean, they send them to Israel. Many of them have decided to cross over to Russia to even join the war in the most extreme circumstances. Which young man from which country would like to do that till he was desperate? So there's been a desperation which is at display. We don't talk about it because talking here is, no, it's not acceptable, because people only do a lot of chest thumping and they think that it's very good to be praising the government under all circumstances. But the truth is very, very dirty and very obvious. But when this option goes away, what do? I mean, you'll plead with the US to allow the H-1B. And what does Mr. Trump think about H-1B? He says, yes, we want H-1B because we need highly skilled waiters. We need head waiters. That is the meaning that he's got. And these people will go for H-1B don't get covered. I mean, the waiters and the other people are not covered by H-1B. So would it change the meaning? Because earlier it was meant for highly skilled, individuals who had wanted to go and work in the US. The industry demanded it. A lot of people came from H-1B and done fantastically well, fabulously well in the US. They have risen to very important positions. But now if you change all that and you're more concerned about who feeds you, who serves you, then I think India, out of respect for dignity, should say that henceforth we will get out of the H-1B program. We don't want to send up people. You should tell them we don't want it. What kind of favor are you doing to the people of India if you make them do all kinds of jobs and when there's no job security?
Why can Modi, or for that matter S. Jaishankar, open their mouth and put things in black and white? Is it going to be that difficult to talk to Trump now?
It's still early days. I think it's too early. I think they would give time. I hope we have the strength to tell the Americans that no, we won't do this, we won't do this, we want the dignity for our people. We should do that. But that's somebody was trying to tell the program that there are so many people from Indian origin who are in the US who don't really belong to India. They come from other countries like the Uganda. What about them? Where there are many others who don't want to come back to India because they've been activists. They've been raising slogans, questions about the way the country has been run, and they will not be supported by the Indian government to come back. What happens to them? So there is a Pandora box of all kinds of issues that is going to come up. And these are still early days, you mind you. This is only 48 hours since Mr. Trump was sworn in. So more complications are going to arise.
Yesterday, I was interviewing Ambassador Kaju, where he very clearly said that certainly he's a disruptor. He's becoming more and more uncertain as the time is passing by. How do you think? Do you think that Donald Trump will be deterred by any of these suit files or the legal cases which will be slapped on birthright issues, as well as maybe who knows, the migration issue also might come up in the court? So, do you think all this can deter Donald Trump, because the kind of brute majority he's got, he'll just ramrod everything?
So till the matter is stayed, till the Supreme Court says that we would not allow it to go forward, we stay the movement. Otherwise, you would have all the guys who've been waiting for Mr. Trump. It's not something that has happened overnight. There is a great expectation that this is what he will do in the first 100 executive orders, and the next 200 orders that he will give. These are against cracking down against illegal immigration, was
Right.
one thing that Mr. Trump was supposed to do. And he's gone about it, and there were people who were waiting for it. And say they will do it. The objectors will fall by the wayside. They will scurry for cover, they scurry to safety, and that is what is really going to happen.
Right. And so, Sanjay, my last question is that, Trump has proved himself as a disruptor, but it's all about making America great for him now. And does America making great means creating havoc across the world? This is what exactly Trump seems to be doing.
Yeah, the definition of making America great again surely is very different for Mr. Trump in comparison to his Democratic opponents and many others who were sitting there. Nobody actually sat up, and they were laughing at times, like Hillary Clinton was when he was making his speech. But I'm not very sure whether he would succeed in whatever he's doing, because people are trying to bite for time. 4 years, they hope that Mr. Trump will go away and things will change. They're hoping that the courts and the slow motion in which the courts move, they will ensure that Mr. Trump's grand ideas about stopping illegal immigrants also get stalled. They saw Mr. Trump, cause a great amount of agony for people who were there in his last term, and they think that the second term would be disastrous, but maybe they can ride it out.
So, which means Make America Great is 4 years of agony for the Americans and havoc across the world. Is that what you would say to it?
I think it'd be fantastic for the so-called tech billionaires who surrounded them. The division is going to increase, and there would also be some kind of a greater relationship between China and the US, and that will be at the cost of Indians. Indians will, I don't know how they will ensure that India remains relevant when China, Russia, and the US are supping together.
Right. So those surely are not very good signs, but we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. Thank you so much.
Surely.
Yeah.
This is just a level of analysis. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining on HW. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay ahead with our Cutting Edge News app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.